Perkins, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. I'd like to, and the clerk can circulate this if she wishes.
Why don't we hear the motion first, so I can ensure it's
That with
in
regard
line.
to the committee's ongoing study of SDTC, and given that, one, the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet of Privy Council, Donalyn McClimont, stated that the selection processes or application-based positions are advertised through notices of opportunity on the Privy Council website. And as I have said from the outset, we would post a notice of opportunity on our website. We would invite people to apply. We would assess those applications. And given, two, former Minister Navdeep Bains said that the process is an open and fair and transparent process that publicly available to all individuals. Anyone who wants to apply can do so. It's open to anyone. And given, three, Annette Verschuren, former chair of SDTC, stated, I never applied for the position of the chair of SDTC, and that there were indications that I was requested. The committee therefore expressed its deep concern with the contradictions between Ms. Verschuren's testimony and the former Minister Navdeep Bains and PCO appointments, and therefore agree to A, order the production of PCO's letter of advice to Minister Bains for the Governor and Council appointment of Annette Verschuren, Guy Ouimet, and Steve Kukucha in both official languages without redactions within 14 days following the adoption of this motion. B, order the production of a copy of Annette Verschuren, Guy Ouimet, and Stephen Kukucha's application to Privy Council office to serve on the board of SDTC, if it exists, in both official languages without redactions within 14 days following the adoption of this motion. C, order the production of any briefing notes, letters, memorandums provided to Minister Bains, former Deputy Minister John Newbley, or Hilary Leftick, from PCO, that were prepared as part of Ms. Verschuren's candidacy as chair in both official languages without redactions within 21 days following the adoption of this motion. And D, hold 2 meetings on SDTC within 14 days following the adoption of this motion and invite former Minister Navdeep Bains, Don Allen McClintock, and Hilary Leftick to provide clarity on the contradictory testimony.
Just 1 second, Mr. Perkins. I'm just going to suspend just for a second, consult with the clerk, and get the motion distributed. Floor, and then I'll turn to a speaking list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During her appearance last week at the Industry Committee, I asked the former chair, Annette Verschuren, when and who called her to be on this board, and she said, I don't know exactly the date. It was a couple of times, I think, he spoke to me, he being the Minister Bains, about this, as did his policy advisor. And then I said, they called you to see if you would do this. And she said, yes. Then I asked her, and I said, in the interview, they said that the government approached you. Is that correct? And she said, that's correct. And I asked her, had you applied before you spoke with Minister Bains or after? And Ms. Verschuren said, I never applied for the position of chair of SDTC. I never applied. And then she subsequently went on another question of mine to say, I've never applied for anything in my life, a very egotistical statement. And then in response further on, she again, when I asked her again, she said, Mr. Chair, I believe the situation was that there were indications that I was requested to consider to be an applicant for this. So she never applied. Yet Minister Bains, when he was before committee, said he got a list from PCO that only had people that applied. And the PCO said that PCO appointments, head of PCO appointments, which works for the Prime Minister, said they only provided names of people who had applied. Spontaneously, several days after the fact, Ms. Verschuren's changed her mind again. But I believe the testimony she gave before committee when she said 3 times she never applied, and that this government asked her to do this as they were pushing the former chair, Jim Bosili, out the door because he had criticized the government in the Ethics Committee for their lack of attention to privacy breaches and the surveillance economy, and a particular breach by Facebook, which in previous testimony the minister made clear on several occasions to former President Leah Lawrence of the Green Slush Fund that was irritating the Prime Minister and the government, and could you not get him to be quiet? So we've got all this contradictory testimony that's here, and as such, these individuals need to come back and clarify just exactly how did all this happen. And the reason is because in the history of SDTC, there has only been, and it's more than 20-year history, there's only been one chair that when appointed and during her appointment was conflicted, where Minister Baines told her and where ADM Noseworthy, who sat in the meetings from ISED, said, we will manage the conflicts. And we've had testimony here today from Mr. Emet and testimony from the previous, the former president that said once Ms. Visharan was appointed, Mr. Emet came to them and said, I'm going to go on this board of this company. I wasn't allowed to go on before because it was a conflict, but now conflicts are okay. I'll go on the board, and that company continued to get more money from SDTC while Mr. Emet was on the board. And the 82% of all transactions that happened in that audit where directors were voting conflict of interest money to boards, they had a total, by the way, of $330 million for that, according to the Auditor General. No wonder Mr. Kukucha and Mr. Emet won't acknowledge the Auditor General's report, because they don't like what she found, which was the truth, that $330 million was voted to companies that board members had interest in. So this contradictory stuff needs to be addressed. I know, Mr. Chair, that on the original motion on the study, these individuals, former Minister Baines, who's now in charge of the highest cell phone prices in the world at Rogers, and the other PCO officials as well as PMO officials need to be in this room, in this meeting, to be held accountable for these contradictions and whether or not they overrode the appointments process to put a political appointee in place in this manner.
Thank you. Before I turn to Mr. Desjardins and others, are you looking? I'll add. I will just for our witnesses, if you gentlemen could just hold fast for a few minutes. I'm just going to see if this is going to take a little while, or if it's going to be wrapped up relatively quickly. If it's done quickly, we will come back to you. So if you can just sit tight for a few minutes as we just hear some of the comments from the members. I do have to deal with the motion right off the bat because it is a matter of hand motion. It is line. So on that note, Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member, Mr. Perkins, for this important motion. I of course, support this motion. It's important that we ask and exhaust as much of the questions relevant to this very important audit. But, Mr. Chair, I do have a point of recommendation, perhaps, to Mr. Perkins or to the mover of the motion. Today we heard an incredible testimony from two witnesses that largely failed to accept the Auditor General's report. It would be incumbent upon me to suggest that the Auditor General be allowed to reply to what I think is instances of an attempt to dissuade the public or attempts to discredit the Auditor General and her work by overly stating its broadness or non-application of evidence. And so I'm not sure if it's within this motion that we can include the attendance of the Auditor General to clarify statements made by witnesses that have largely obfuscated, I think, the public record on the importance of her findings. And so, Mr. Chair, would it be okay for
Mr. Desjardins
Perkins to amend this to include the Auditor General?
So that is not necessary. The Auditor General has already been included in a previous motion, and it is our custom.
She's a witness that's coming forward later?
She'll have an opportunity.
Okay,
as well, the Auditor General has an open invitation to attend any of these hearings on studies that she has conducted, her and her office. But
I suppose that's our chair, Mr.
They generally choose to do so when it's institutions that have been put under the microscope of her office. So the OAG will attend at some point as part of these hearings, Mr. Desjardins. So I think your amendment, while has some support anyway, is moot and does not need to be considered at this time.
What is a question to our chair then, Is it possible to, within the same 2-week period to which we would be summoning this information and these documents and these witnesses, that in that same period of scheduling, we can see that the Auditor General be present or at least invited as a relation to our former witness list that she's included on?
I can't guarantee that because I negotiate with her office about times that are suitable. But I can assure you, the Auditor General, the OAG will be appearing, and I'm working on the calendar to ensure that the motions that this committee have passed are duly respected.
Right,
I hear what you're saying, and I'll have discussions with you. I'm now going to turn to Mr. Drouin, who requested the floor.
Just a quick question. I know there was a motion adopted on September 5th, and I'm wondering whether or not the September 5th motion would correspond to what is being asked here in the spirit of redundancy. And I do salute my honourable colleagues' willingness to get to the bottom of this, although I'm assuming that tomorrow they will vote no on the non-confidence, as they do want to see those documents, right? I'm assuming you're not going to want to go into an election this time around. And so then that brings me to, why do this if you're wanting to go into an election right away? I question their motivations, if you can permit me, Mr. Chair, but I would ask the clerk whether or not the September 5th motion that was adopted on September 5th, we have reasons to believe that it would answer a lot of the motion, the items of the motion that is being asked here.
I'm going to ask you to put the questions through to the chair. Maybe make some arguments, Mr. Duran. I'm not sure. I mean, we assessed one motion. I mean, we assessed the motions. I'm not sure if you're looking.
I'm looking for nonpartisan advice, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, I respect your opinion, but I would like a may I consult through
sure,
you, Mr. Chair? The clerk,
you're certainly new, so I will turn things over to the clerk, so I can pretty much guess what she is going to say, things about being masters of their own domain. But clerk, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just for the committee, I will read the motion that was adopted on September 5th as amended, which is that the committee order the production of the following documents: the advice letter to the then Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry regarding the 2019 appointment of the Sustainable Development Technology Canada Chair, as referenced by the witness today; the minutes of all meetings of the selection committee that considered that appointment; and all communications between Privy Council Office and then Minister Baines' office, the Prime Minister's office, and the Department of Industry respecting the appointment of Ms. Verushin as Chair of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, and that these documents be deposited with the clerk of the committee within 3 weeks of the adoption of this motion. There could be some overlap here, but it is at the member's discretion to discuss this and come to a decision.
So you're welcome, Mr. Knight. The floor is yours, of course. You're welcome to make any amendments to the motion you see fit, if you think that is in order.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's I'm always here to work with others as well. I'm just wondering if we can park this and wait till we get the information, and if it's not satisfactory to Mr. Perkins, then Mr. Perkins could reintroduce his motion and we can move forward on the adoption of that particular motion. But if it's to be submitted to this committee by 3 weeks, we're getting close to the end time. So I'm assuming that documents will be showing up at this committee fairly shortly.
Thank you. Madame Secrétaire Gagné.
De notre côté.
On our end, we also support the motion. I think that the contradictions that we see among the testimony are very problematic. And the contradiction that was noted in the motion which we are debating today at study, there are others, notably on who managed Sustainable Development Canada, because on the one hand there is the ADM of Innovation, who said it was the Canada Research Council, and then we had a director from RC that said they weren't the ones. There are many contradictions in the testimony which are not allowing us to do our work as parliamentarians. So we hope that we'll move to a vote on this very quickly.
Very much. Clerk, call the question, please. I'm afraid the question's been called, Ms. Khalid.
But Chair, I had my hand up
I
before
did
you
not see
called
your
the
hand, Ms.
question.
Khalid, and I waited
I find that
a
to be a
good,
little bit unfair, Chair.
call the question. Question's been called.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we're talking about 5 seconds. She said she wanted to speak.
I had
Mr.
my-
Mr.
I had my
Mr.
hand
Mr.
up.
Duray,
I'm
I.
assuming,
okay.
I'm assuming, I've been on other I've been on other committees with an opposition chair. I've been sat on government operations for 6 years. There's always this collegiality back and forth, of course.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid says she wanted to have the floor, but you gave her no time. I'm just wondering, how are we running the show here?
Mr. Duray, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I scan the room as members
Chair,
are talking.
I swear to you, I had my hand up
Miss
while Mr. Joanne was
Khalid,
speaking.
Miss Khalid, you know my practice. I was even deliberately slow between the end of Madame St. Clair and before calling the.
I thought
well,
you
Mr.
recognized me and put it on your list, Chair.
And call the question has
Chair.
been the question has
Chair,
been called.
No, Chair, I would
Miss
challenge
Khalid,
you on that.
I was going to say that is your option, is to challenge me on that. So the chair has been challenged. Clerk, please.
Great.
Great.
Shall the decision of the chair be maintained? Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Khalid? No. Monsieur Drouin? No. Mr. Erskine-Smith?
No.
Ms. Yip?
No.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? Yes. Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés?
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
That's yeah.
5 yeas, 5 nays.
Thank you. Please call the question on the motion. Ms. Table, Mr. Perkins.
Shall the motion of Mr. Perkins be adopted? Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Khalid? No. Mr. Drouin? No. Mr. Erskine-Smith?
No.
Ms. Yip? No. Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés?
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins?
I vote in favor, yes.
The motion is passed. I'm